benvenuti alla conferenza stampa di Snowden, non ha bisogno di alcuna presentazione, Oliver Stone. Intanto vi ricordo che il film distribuito da BIM uscirà in sala il 1° dicembre e dunque vorrei cominciare con una domanda, poi attendo le vostre. Dunque lei con i suoi film, con il suo cinema ha sempre raccontato dei momenti di svolta della storia americana. Quanto questa storia, la storia di Snowden, è o sarà un punto di svolta? In realtà è una storia che non è ancora finita.
Well, I think the information that Mr. Stone gave us in 2013 with evidence was very significant, but I really truly don't think that most American people understood it and the meaning of it. They always think about their own iPhone, their own secrets and stuff, but the meaning of it was, it took me time to understand. I mean, it really is complicated, but it's truly bigger than I ever thought, and it took talking to Mr. Stone over 9 different visits over 2 years, 2.5 years, I began to understand the scope of what the United States has been doing with data mining the entire world, not just shopping catalogs, not just Pokemon, not just what you shop, what you like at Google or eBay, but this is much deeper. And that was part of the pleasure of making the film, is revealing. Is this simultaneous translation? So I don't, this is not, yeah, I see. So this is revealing the steps of how he, well, let me put it this way. The information was so complicated, in my opinion, that I think most of the population missed it, and I think the press missed it to a large degree. Going back into the story and rediscovering it through the messenger who brought the message was able to create the world of the messenger and how he found this out and how he reacted to it, and eventually came to the decision to reveal it. I think in doing that, you begin to understand a little bit better what he's revealing. As I said, it's not just about surveillance. And the point is that we're trying to make the message clearer. I don't know that we've completely succeeded, because it's still a complicated movie, and it's still a lot of stuff in there that evades, it doesn't interest most Americans. Remember, in 2013, Mr. Snowden was not popular in the United States. Anybody in the system who reveals secrets that belong to the military or to the state is immediately suspected of bad behavior. And I don't think many people have really thought about it too much. And think they confuse him with Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning. They don't know who he is, some people. They really don't know who he is. I was recently in the border of the United States going back in, and the border guard said, "What were you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And I said, "I'm a filmmaker." And he says, "Oh, yeah, what have you filmed? What have you done?" I said, "Well, I'm releasing this movie on Snowden." And he said, "Snowden, what's that?" He says, "Not about snow." I said, so it's not that evident, you see. Most people don't know who he is.
Allora, ci sono delle domande, una domanda qui intanto e poi una lì.
Allora, Catena solo per l'ingegnere volevo chiedere, hai avuto dei problemi a girare questo film? Cioè ci sono state in qualche modo delle interferenze? Probabilmente questo film sarà un fuoco di fiamma, cioè farà tornare l'attenzione pubblica su questo argomento che forse è stato anche un po' sottaciuto e dimenticato, anche se ha fatto scalpore e scandalo. Quindi dando maggiori informazioni e in qualche modo spiegando meglio, può darsi che ci siano delle importanti reazioni. Tra l'altro siamo in piena campagna elettorale, quindi volevo capire, intanto gli americani hanno già visto questo film oppure no? E poi sulle location, dove hai girato? Cioè, probabilmente non nei posti ovviamente dove dichiari, ma sono piuttosto interessanti le location, grazie.
Okay, I still have 5 questions. One would be, yeah, we did have issues. The film was not financeable in the United States. No major corporation would back it. It was very disappointing to all of us. We went to France and Germany to get this film primarily financed, and European countries also with auxiliary sales. We shot it in Munich, not because the Germans required it, but because our German producers really felt strongly that we would have less problems in Germany than we in the United States. We also shot a week in the U.S., 2 weeks in the U.S., and 1 week Hong Kong. Then we shot 3 days in Moscow. But it was a complicated, hard shoot. The information that Mr. Snowden gave us was so complex and difficult to get your head around, and how do you dramatize it? These were the hardest issues for me besides the shooting, was to write a script with Kieran Fitzgerald, my co-writer, that would be move along like a movie and yet be coherent and realistic to this idea of what surveillance means. So we thought that was the hardest part. The other question was about reception. The reception in the U.S. was mixed, very mixed. I was surprised because many good critics, but at the same time very nasty ones too. I think the people were not as interested as we hoped. This is not a conventional spy movie. It doesn't have any chases, any shootings, or violence, but it is very realistic to the story that we know. We tried not to break the barriers and try to do something that wasn't true. Well, I think that was 3 of the 5. I don't know. The other 2.
Ha risposto.
Si sente? Sì. Francesco Gallo Alza. Avevo 2 domande, ma una è se lei oggi direbbe ancora, consiglierebbe a noi di stare attenti al telefonino, cioè spegnete i telefonini. E un'altra, sempre sulle presidenziali americane, se vuol dire una sua opinione su quello che sta accadendo oggi in America con le presidenziali. Grazie.
I'm so sorry. Can someone take a look at this, please? It seems to have come and go. For a moment there, I thought I spoke Italian for some reason. What was it?
Scusami, l'altra era? La prima?
Se chiederebbe ancora oggi a noi di spegnere i telefonini. E un'altra sulle...
Okay, I recommend being careful. Of course, I think we all know at the primary level we're all potential suspects, not necessarily in the present tense, but you can become a suspect in the future tense. There might be things now that are not crimes, but will become crimes. Any form of protest may change in our country, and we may be liable for pressure from the government. There's no end to the possibilities that exist, because now you're on a database. So I would, where necessary, try to find your way to use encryption. There are services now. One of the good results of the Snowden reveals was that the corporations, many of the internet companies, were collusion with the United States, collaborating with the government, unknown to their customers, and as a result, many customers were starting to leave, and the companies have now provided, most of them are trying to provide some privacy and encryption help. It's of course very difficult to tell what the NSA is still doing. They're advanced a lot since the Snowden years. There were reforms of some kind, but they're not major. They were mild. The recommendations of the Presidential Commission, again, were interesting, and they were done in 2014 in December, but they were not enforced by Obama. He basically did very little. The NSA is a very powerful organization. Very little was known about it, very little. And in fact, the whole movie is coming from Snowden's story himself. And he was able to provide the details and the dialogue that we were not able to do. So it's a very long, drawn-out process to get anything out of any government agencies like this to change, to begin to change and begin to reform. I see no evidence of it. It's lip service. About the election, you know, I've been asked this all over Europe. I guess in Europe you're freaked out by Trump. Frankly, I don't think he has a chance. I never did. I think that he's too erratic. But I think that you're missing the bigger point, which is that you're voting for Clinton, and what does she represent? And you have to think about, she represents the U.S. System, the U.S. way of thinking, which is you're with us or you're against us. And I think it's going to get rougher. I think she's tougher than Obama, more militaristic, and more inclined to insult other countries and also to participate in regime change. I'm not exonerating Obama, but she's definitely been involved in regime change on Libya, Iraq, Syria, Honduras, and there are probably other possibilities, but we don't want to discuss that necessarily in the open here. I don't see a spirit of reform, if that's what you mean.
Bertuccioli, La Nazione e il resto del Carlino.
No, I'm not getting English again. This is, why don't I get the English?
Ripetiamo? Direttrice Bertuccioli, La Nazione e il resto del Carlino. Funziona? Sì, ok. Allora volevo chiederle se Snowden ha visto il film e cosa ha detto, e poi domani è il suo compleanno, compie 70 anni, auguri. È un bilancio di questi primi 70 anni.
I have taken stock, and my birthday occurred a month ago. But I appreciate the call out. It is a difficult time. It is a good time in your life. You have to hopefully stand up for something and say what you got to say, because you're not going to be around that long. But I'm glad I'm still making movies. I was able to make this movie difficult. One of my producers is here, Fernando Sulichin, who helped us get it done. Man in the center here. Thank you, Fernando. But it was so difficult. And thank God for European countries. Mr. Stone saw the movie. He helped us with the script. We took the script to him 2 times, and he made many helpful suggestions as well as corrections about technical information and the details of the sets, how the NSA works. Told us a lot. And then on the film, I was concerned, of course, about it. Not only the script being hacked, it would be quite a bounty to hack the greatest hacker in the world would be mean something big on the internet. On the other hand, the film could have been hacked too, and I always worried about that. The film would show up a month or 2 before we were released, and for the world, and that would have been hurtful to us and grievous, but it wasn't. So no, Snowden was very much a key to this, and approved of the film, liked it, and went on and gave an interview to that effect. It was as close to the real thing as a film could be, realizing that we're using actors and we only have 2 hours to tell a story that took 9 years.
Salve, Caprara alla Stampa. Volevo chiederle due cose. Una, c'è un bel attacco, insomma, molto chiaro al presidente Obama, perché prima dice una cosa, poi dice tutto il contrario, insomma, nel film ovviamente non fa una bella figura, questa è la prima. La seconda, volevo chiederle se nella disillusione del protagonista, che è un disilluso perché è uno che vuole servire la patria e che comincia nei Marines, eccetera, se ha trovato anche dal suo punto di vista proprio emotivo, emozionale, personale, una qualche rispondenza con lei, con se stesso. Grazie.
First of all, on the Obama question, there's no editorializing on my part or the filmmakers. These are his exact words. This is from his speeches. So he implicates himself. It's not our intention to have gone after him, but he certainly was a candidate for reform, and the entire spirit of oppressing journalists, calling out on whistleblowers, and making the government even more difficult to share information is certainly coming from him and nobody else. He had a choice. He was given a lot of support for change. He didn't take it. Number two, bear in mind that there are similarities, yes, in terms of my history, but I was much slower to turn against the. Oh, here I'm back in Italian. Let's pull the table closer. Let's get. Let me make one thing clear. I changed. I came back. I was raised conservatively, like Mr. Snowden was, and I worked. When I came back, I was shocked by what I'd seen in Vietnam, but I didn't understand the pattern, the overall pattern. I was still too young, and it took me more years. And when I finally went to Central America in 1980s, under Reagan, and I saw the United States again starting the process of invasion of Central America, specifically against Nicaragua, but putting troops and having advisors in Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador, death squads and everything, I began to see the same pattern as I saw in Vietnam. You wake up eventually. And then in my life, from subject to subject to subject, I kept expanding my knowledge until about 10 years ago, I went back to a form of college and studied American history from 1890s to 2013, and I made the documentary Untold History of the United States, which I believe was shown in Italy and is available in book also. Untold History of the United States is a documentary, and in fact, the facts have been double-checked many times, and it's a horrible story. It's funny that I finished the film, it finishes in 2013, and a few months later is when Mr. Snowden comes out of the woodwork with his revelations. But he was younger, and it took tremendous courage for him to do this. That's what this movie is about, why he did it, how he did it, his relationship with Shailene Woodley, his girlfriend Lindsay Mills of 9 years. It's a serious relationship. The journalists never covered it, they never took it seriously. She plays a huge role in keeping him human, he still has his soul at the end of this movie. This movie I see it as a Kafka movie, in the sense that he's in a system that is so overpowering and so deadening that you end up doing bad things, illegal things, without thinking about it. I think the epilepsy, if you look at the film closely, has a lot to do with his deadness, and the epilepsy is a throwing up of a spiritual sickness. It leads to complications. But on the issue of why he did it, you have to remember, he was all for surveillance of terrorism. I am too. It's what they call targeted surveillance. You go after a suspect who's shown some kind of activity, you follow him with signals and human intelligence, and that generally, with good detective work, yields a result. That was always the thought process. But why did America suddenly install mass surveillance? That is what doesn't make sense. The theory was that we can use mass surveillance, they told the American public, we can use mass surveillance in order to pick up the odd phone call, the stray thing that happens.